This isn't just a question for movies or books, this is a question for life. Here's why. Given the current landscape of entertainment, pop culture, or art in general, it's no wonder that me and so many others have chosen to dust off our old DVDs and revisit the classic movies and TV shows that were a part of our lives in no small measure. This is the status of so-called pop culture in the lives of those who were children and teenagers in the 70s, 80s, 90s. We can go back further in time to prove this point, but for now, I'll stick with the decades that I experienced firsthand. Back then, going to the movies was an experience, much like going to the theater or a concert. It was an event. One could even argue that the same happened when our favorite TV shows came on, as families or groups of friends gathered around the TV set to embark on an escapist journey. Not only that, but in a world that was rapidly expanding, these movies and shows, they provided a level of understanding of ourselves that reached way beyond our immediate social groups. As it turned out, there weren't just 5 of us fascinated by vampires and werewolves and the supernatural. We weren't the only ones imagining long voyages through deep space or the inner earth, or fantasizing about another life in which we were lone wolf detectives, turned bitter by life's vicissitudes, but still hanging on to a deeply ingrained sense of justice and righteousness, even if our moral standards were questionable. You see, fiction and consequently escapism, they didn't just provide entertainment. Rather than being simple pleasures of sight and sound, movies and TV shows actually allowed us a glimpse into ourselves, a broader sense of empathy that encompassed the whole world, or a large part of it. With a push of a button on our TV set or the purchase of a movie ticket, for a brief moment in time, we were part of something bigger than ourselves. For a brief moment in our lives, all loneliness disappeared. So why don't we feel this profound connection with our fiction these days? Or rather, why is it so rare? Well, simply put, it only happens when these movies and shows speak true to our very souls. But what does that mean exactly, and how does one accomplish such an amazing feat? If you've ever written a book, a short story, a one-page fictional narrative, you've certainly come across this very dilemma. What happens now? Don't worry, we all come to it sooner or later, and there's a good reason for it. When creating a story, we are, in many ways, God. We can create an entire world or universe and populate it as we see fit. From past to present to future, we choose what happens and what doesn't. We determine what is possible and what is impossible. And as we populate our world, we choose who are the active characters that will serve the purpose of unraveling our new world and hopefully take an audience on an engaging, unforgettable journey. But we're not gods. We are human beings, and in some ways that's way too much power for a human being to have. Part of being human is being self-aware, aware of our strength and our fallibility. We have the strength and courage to build entire worlds, but this is a mission filled with trial and error. So how do we make sure we are making a good decision, the best decision, when met with a choice? What happens next in our story? When creating a story, when acting as gods, we are ultimately alone. Every choice is on our shoulders, as is the brunt of its consequences. Whatever we choose will impact the next plot point, and, one after the other, a story will unravel and build upon itself until it ultimately concludes, and hopefully, we, both creator and audience, find meaningful resolution. This is the problem with choice, its inevitable consequence for both story and character. Does Han shoot first or simply react to Greedo's shot? Does Marty face his deadliest foe in a duel completely unprepared or run away from a needless conflict back to his own time? Does Atreyu succumb to loneliness and despair in the marshes? Or does he keep walking with no clear heading, searching for a place that might not even exist when his legs can barely hold him? Does Max Klein eat the strawberry? Does Rick Deckard kill Roy Batty and ends his mission? Or does Batty kill Deckard and avenge his family? Does McClane keep a cool head in the face of mass murder and guarantee his survival? Or does his anger take over and make him do something stupid? Some of these choices will impact the plot one way or the other, but none would prevent the story from reaching the same ending. So why are they important? Because they speak to character. By invoking the old dogma of filmmaking, show, don't tell, we see that humans intuitively understand a character's motivations by their actions more than their words. We as creators can choose for a character to say one thing and do exactly that, say one thing and do the opposite, not say anything and act, or say a lot and do nothing. Each of these will manifest differently depending on the character we're bringing to life, but for that, we must know the character intimately, in many ways better than they know themselves. Han shoots first, yes, because he's a survivor-made mercenary in a universe rife with treason and danger. He is moved, as we learn later, not by malice, but by self-preservation and cunning, traits he developed due to necessity rather than whim. Han Solo is righteous, even when his morals can be questioned by those who didn't experience the struggles he had to overcome to become the man he is today. Having never fired a gun in his entire life outside of video games, Marty chooses to face his greatest challenge in a duel with the deadliest of foes he ever encountered. He doesn't do this because it was the only way out of the saloon, surely some sort of a diversion would have helped his escape, but because he had to. After a lifetime of being called chicken, it's time to put his courage to the test and prove to himself once and for all if he is worthy of the alter ego he chose for his time in the Wild West, his own pop culture hero, Clint Eastwood. Atreyu keeps walking because, quite simply, he must. Known as a hero far and wide, despite his delicate young looks, Atreyu rose to the challenge of saving Fantasia, but is yet to be tested. In the marshes, the audience is faced with the dreadful fate of sending a child into harm's way in gut-wrenching desperation. To our amazement, however, Atreyu keeps walking when most of us would have crumbled. The audience realizes, much like the people of Fantasia, that heroes are not measured by their muscles, but by their determination. Max Klein is fatally allergic to strawberries. In this scene, however, he believes he's already dead and no longer bound by human vulnerability. But how strongly does he believe this? Could he be lying to himself? Isn't self-delusion a form of human vulnerability? Max Klein eats the strawberry. Nothing happens. He is ridden of human fear and turmoil, a ghost wandering on Earth, forever untouchable, forever free. Deckard, a man with a mission, is faced with crippling existential doubt when he must choose to either retire, kill Roy Batty, a clearly sentient albeit synthetic being, and betray his own humanity, or allow Batty to live, thus betraying the mission he swore to uphold and risk being killed in the process. Roy Batty, in turn, has a choice of his own. Either kill Deckard and avenge the death of his family, and in the process prove to the humans once and for all that he and his kind are as dangerous, murderous, and unreliable as they were thought to be, or prove his humanity by sparing Deckard and risk being retired, put down, like the disposable tools they were built to be. The author's choice? None of the above, and the audience is engaged with their own existential dilemmas in a debate that still goes on today. In McClane's line of duty, good instincts are the key to survival, but the trade-off is operating on an unrefined emotional state, responsible for much of the misery in his personal life, like his divorce, for example. When faced with the mass murder of his fellow policeman, McClane is brought to the limit of his wits and struggles to find an output for his overwhelming rage. By forcing himself to tame the savage beast that's growing inside him, McClane combines his need for an unrefined outburst with the need for a suitable response to the problem. The choice becomes clear. The problem with most movies and TV shows today is neatly illustrated in these examples, as their creators fail to see the power of empathy. Our present-day fiction either focuses too much on hitting every beat of a neatly outlined plot, thus sacrificing the character's humanity, or focuses too much on an idealistic version of the character's humanity, or lack thereof, thus sacrificing a potentially interesting plot for one that merely serves the ego of the main character. In short, what our fiction offers today could be characterized as mostly simple and predictable solutions to inconsequential problems. I could go off on a list of examples as I did before, but to be honest, I would much rather save you and myself the heartache. However, there is an important point to be made about the true power of empathy. When we, the audience, are engaged in the struggles of our fictional heroes and eagerly await on the edge of our seats for their choices to reveal, what we understand is this: human beings are complex, multi-layered, volatile, and often unpredictable creatures. This is part of the magic that makes us human, that we are able to come up with surprising solutions to exceptional dilemmas. Through empathy, through the acknowledgement that there is a bit of us in them and a bit of them in us, we become part of the scene, right there with them, riddled by the same existential doubts, looking forward for insight. As our heroes face their challenges and make their choices, for better or worse, they learn from them and grow as individuals, and we do too, alongside them. Now I'll end with the best part of this whole conflict between sacrificing character for plot or plot for character. Picking up on the examples I mentioned previously, it seems like their characters and plots unravel and develop seamlessly, almost as if the stories weren't created at all, but were already there to begin with, and someone just took the time to write them down and produce them. This, to me, is the trait of success when it comes to storytelling. And here's the trick to make this happen. 1. You know that you've fleshed out a character when they make their own choices, with very little input from their creator. In other words, a well-fleshed out character will make their choices known to their creator as the scene develops. Therefore, the existential dilemma on part of the creator, i.e. writer's block, is defeated. 2. You know you're unraveling an exciting, meaningful plot when the character's choices, however unpredictable, enhance the world you're building. In other words, don't be afraid to drift from your original intention if the character's choice feels right. One way or the other, it will be a meaningful experience. There is no need to stick to a checklist in storytelling. Think of it as the Wild West, with its open plains stretching out as far as the eye can see, where potential perils and adventures lurk under every rock or on the other side of every mountain. Run wild and explore. Meaning will arise. One last thing, remember, much like in our own lives, not all meaningful choices must lead to world domination. Sometimes they're as simple as eating a strawberry. Thanks for stopping by today. If you found this meaningful, I'd love to know how in the comments below. Also, leave a like, subscribe for more, and remember, you're always welcome at the Den. See you next time.